Great.
We're doing it? We'll let everybody get seated. We're back, y'all. We have locked the doors. My presentation is 6 hours long, so get ready. So as I said, I'm Carla Rhodes, and today I'm going to talk about from comedy to conservation photography. So my past life, before I was a conservation photographer, I was a ventriloquist, believe it or not. That's what I spent since I was a kid pursuing. And through a series of really strange and wacky events, I accidentally found conservation photography. And so today I'm going to show you guys and tell you guys and inspire you all, hopefully, how I've been helping wildlife for photography and some projects along the way. So first off, I thought I would talk about what conservation photography is, in case some of us don't know. So Joel Sartore, an amazing Nat Geo photographer and creator of the photo arc, if you haven't seen it, check it out. He said once, the typical nature photograph shows a butterfly and a pretty flower, but the conservation photograph shows the same thing, but with a bulldozer coming at it in the background. So I thought to illustrate this, I'd show some photos. This was at the start of my photographic journey. This was taken in the Catskill Mountains where I live. And even though it seems like all the really cool nature people live in Massachusetts or Vermont, I'm serious, it's pretty amazing. Chelsea and I were talking about that. All the tracking and everything, I think even all the porcupines are here, but Catskills are pretty cool as well. So this is a photo of some red fox kits that I took, and I mean, this photo is fine. They're cute, they're adorable. Perhaps you could say with words, this is talking about, you know, how red foxes have adapted to man-made structures or that they're cute. But the next photo is one I took 10 minutes later. To me, this is more of a conservation photograph, just with the difference between the two. To me, this is a much richer storytelling photograph. You can say, hey, this is about human encroachment, or this is about capitalism, or this is about how we shop too much, or this is about how our wild neighbors have adapted. So this was just to explain conservation photography. And what does conservation photography mean to me? It's really going beyond just taking a picture. If my pictures just sit on my hard drive, they're pretty meaningless to me. I really want to photograph for the greater good and give back to the issue at hand. So also as a conservation photographer, I adhere to a very strict code of ethics in the field. So I always prioritize the welfare of my subjects. I never ever bait, lure, or call wildlife. Everything you're going to see is natural and things I've found naturally. And I always balance my personal photo needs with respect for the subject. It's never worth it for me to disturb wildlife, harm wildlife, modify the environment just to get a photo. I just wouldn't feel good about it. Also providing accurate and truthful captions. So if an animal is captive, say at a sanctuary, it will always be labeled as such. And, you know, the goal of my work is to really leave a lasting impact, to try to hope to help wildlife, even if it's just one person that can go, wow, deer mice are totally adorable. I'm not going to use a glue trap and be a terrible person. So no laughs from that? Come on. No glue traps. Come on. So how did I find conservation photography? Through a series of random events, photography actually found me. I never in my life thought I would be a photographer. It was something that I never even thought about. So I moved to New York City in 2004 to pursue dreams of being a working comedic ventriloquist. I had pursued ventriloquism since I was 8 years old. I don't know if you've ever heard of Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop, but thank you. Yeah, she was, let's hear it for her. Unsung hero. There's an amazing book that just came out about her. And she was actually a mentor. When I was a kid, I used to write her letters every day, and she started writing me back one day, probably because she was sick of getting 10 letters from me a week. So I pursued that while I was a teenager, and it brought me to New York City. And I performed many places, appeared on TV, I traveled internationally. I met so many of my heroes, but deep down, as I got older, it just wasn't fulfilling for me. It just felt like a suit that didn't fit anymore, some dinosaur overalls that were a little too tight. They just didn't feel great anymore. And I really deep down felt like something was missing. So this is me with near the end of this career with my sidekick, Cecil Sinclair. Cecil was from the 1920s, and he was a vaudeville agent. I was his assistant. He's holding saltwater taffy, which he controlled my mind with. And his whole thing was he had been stuck in his steamer trunk since the 1920s, and I discovered him in the modern world. So he was one of my favorite characters that I ever worked with, and he was actually made in the 1920s. That's why he looks permanently drunk. So I did put some quotes through here to do some hashtag inspo for everyone. So life is what happens when you're busy making other plans, and that's kind of what happened with me. So I actually got my first DSLR camera in 2015 to produce videos of my ventriloquism work. At the time, DSLR cameras had, and they still do, really great video capabilities. So I got one to make videos for Cecil, my sidekick, because I wanted to have a web series. And at the time I was coming up to the Catskills Mountains, and it really, the camera, I just started photographing wildlife up there. Really blurry, terrible shots of wildlife, but I was having a blast. And before I knew it, I had really fallen in love with the art form of photography. And I found the more I did it, the more it lowered my anxiety, the more I could be mindful and in the moment in nature. I actually grew up in Kentucky in a very rural area, but I just couldn't wait to get out of the woods. I absolutely hated it. But you know, after all that time in New York City, there was nothing better for my mind and my soul than nature. And so photography really reconnected me with nature. So then another strange thing happened. In 2018, I was asked to be filmed for a reality television pilot. Someone called me and said, would you be interested in joining someone that you've never met and driving a motorized rickshaw through the Himalayas?
How could you say no to an offer like that?
I was terrified, and they actually wanted me to come on and take a puppet in the rickshaw, and I said, I'm actually exploring photography. I'll bring my camera. I'd actually always dreamed of going to India, but never had an excuse to go and never had really traveled that much. And my husband is here. Let's hear it for Andy for putting up with it. Because poor Andy, what he's been through, like last summer when I lost my drone and went to go get it and yellow jackets came out of the ground and stung me a million times and I come into the kitchen screaming. Or the other time I came in covered in leeches. Andy. So Andy's a big reason why I went on this. It was a week before the trip and I was literally panicking and I'm like, I cannot do this. And he goes, he's from Queens, New York. I'll try to do his accent. Wait a second, I'm going to have some coffee. He goes, Carla, if you don't go to India, you're going to regret it your whole life. I think he just wanted a break from me, but no, he really encouraged me to go. I really was going to chicken out. And during this journey, you can see here, this is the rickshaw, and these are up in the Himalayas. These aren't even roads. And this really changed my life, and some of the highest places we went were over 17,000 feet. And at one point, because I had never been up even that high, I did have to get oxygen. So it was pretty wild. And these are some photos. This is way up top in the Himalayas in a monastery. This is one of the few times my teammate let me drive the rickshaw, but on the left of this, it drops thousands of feet. And I was veering that way, he was screaming. So I decided after that, if I wanted to make it home alive, I wouldn't drive anymore. This is very high up in the Himalayas. I remember I was altitude sick and trying to push us out of the mud.
Can we see that show somewhere?
You know, it never aired. I've seen clips. There's a lot of crying in it. So part of me is pretty glad it didn't air. I think at this point, I would like to see it though, because now when I think about it, I mean, that was insane. But I'm glad I went because it ended up changing my whole life. Who funded this? It was a TV series. So they brought me over. It was a TV. Yeah, I mean, that's showbiz. It happens. It happens, but ended up on the cutting room floor. Story of my life. But it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And because of that, I ended up in really remote Northeast India, a place called Assam, which is way over here. And I chose to go to Assam again by accident. You can see a thing that I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm following my heart, which has been my greatest guide since I've connected to it. And this time I was in India, it was late September, and I had never seen an elephant in the wild. There's lots of Asian elephants in India, and there's rhinos, and of course there's tigers, but there's also katlingers, which are these amazing monkeys with like hats on. And there's hulak gibbons with these giant eyebrows. Just incredible wildlife. And I ended up in Assam because there were no other national parks that were accessible during the rainy season. So I picked Assam, which I had honestly never even heard of. And I didn't realize it took like 2 days to get there, but I ended up there and it was amazing. And en route between two locations in Assam, I saw a giant 5-foot-tall bird that looked like a dinosaur standing by the side of the road. And I asked the driver to please stop, and he did. And he said it was a Greater Adjutant stork, which I had never heard of. And I asked to see more of them. And I really thought that he would take me to a wetland or a forest or a place where storks might live, these dinosaur storks. And instead he took me to the Borogon landfill, which is the largest year-round population of Greater Adjutants in the world. So I'd never been in a scenario like this, and it literally split me in half. I can't even explain what it was like as an American with the things that many of us don't appreciate, fresh water and all these things, to be in a landfill where people live and Greater Adjutants. I mean, it was intense. This moment changed my whole life. And these are Greater Adjutants in the landfill. You can see a cow lounging, and you can see some black kites mixed in, some raptors. So seeing this really changed my life, this whole scenario, because also in America, we bury our waste. It really changed me on so many levels, because this is here. In America, we just don't see it the same way. It really taught me a lot on so many levels. I'm so grateful for that moment. And see, even the slide says, this moment changed my life. So, and it really did. It literally, people, I remember laughing coming home, because you always hear like, ooh, India will change you. And it's all sounds so strange, but it did. It completely changed me. And so Greater Adjutants, I think they're adorable. You can fight me about this. I mean, sorry, Andy, but these are cute birds. I mean, look at this. I like a character. They're one of the world's rarest and most endangered storks. There's less than 1,200 left in the world. And Assam is the last stronghold for the species. They have over 80% of the population. And the Greater Adjutant has had a really hard time. A lot of people think they're a bad omen, that they're messy, smelly pests, because if you can imagine a 5-foot-tall bird with an 8-foot wingspan that nests in your backyard. You know, a lot of people cut down trees. They just don't want them there. They don't want giant dinosaur birds in their backyard. I guess I can understand. I would totally be freaking out, though. I would love to have these birds in my backyard. And as you all know, scavengers play a really important role in our ecosystem and our nature's cleanup crew. I also absolutely adore turkey vultures. Let's hear it for them. Nature's garbage men. I absolutely love them. So after I got back from that trip, I mean, really, it was like something shifted in my soul or whatever's inside of here. And I decided to dedicate my whole life to conservation photography. When I came back, I had a few performances to give, and I came home, I told my husband, I said, I'm never performing again. This is all I want to do. And that's what I did. And I dreamt and dreamt of going back to Assam to photograph these birds. And so this trip was in late 2018, and I just became obsessed with Greater Adjutants. And I found out that there was a whole group of women there saving this bird, a big movement called the Hargila Army Hargila is Assamese for bone swallower and also the local name for Greater Adjutant. So what did I do? I went all the way back to India all alone. I'd never photographed a story. I'd never done anything like that in my life. And I just went. And Purnima, who saves the Greater Adjutants, said this: a dream is not a dream until you lose sleep, which I love. There's some hashtag inspo for you all. So this is one of my favorite people I've ever met my whole life. She actually visited me in the Catskills last summer. We're still in touch on a regular basis. This is Purnima Devi Barman. She's a wildlife biologist and the founder of the Hargila Army, which is a grassroots conservation effort for Greater Adjutants. And she and her team, they protect nesting sites, they save fallen baby birds, and they educate the community on these scavengers, on Greater Adjutants. And it's pretty amazing because even when I was there, I watched her completely change people's minds. And these people in the village went from really demonizing Greater Adjutants to really having local pride in protecting these birds. I tell people locally where I live, it'd be like if we had a coyote army, or what else do people, I love coyotes, but I'm sure you all know living here, I'm trying to think, or like the rattlesnake protectors. I love rattlesnakes. I love them. They actually live near me, and I have a friend that calls them the gentlemen of snakes, because they really just want to scoot away and be cute. So thousands of women are involved in the Hargila Army, and Purnima's done great things. This Makala Shandor that she's wearing, you can see Hargila is woven on it. I was lucky enough to bring a lot of textiles back. They're like nothing you've ever seen in your life. They're incredible. So they weave Hargila literally into the culture there. And she does awareness programs at schools. I got to go to a school and see the children learning about Hargila. They just become part of their life and part of their pride. And I think what she's doing is a great model for community-led conservation efforts. I kind of want to start a coyote brigade now, but I might need to do the Fisher Brigade first. I love fishers. Why do people say they scream? I've never heard one scream. Everybody, he knows in the back. So when I talked about them living in people's backyards, I'm literally standing in someone's backyard and there's a whole nest of Hargilas. So if you can imagine seeing that, I mean, I'm smiling ear to ear because it was insane and amazing. And this is Purnima. Children know Hargila. I remember this little kid was so happy to see Hargila. This is a poster I made. I always, with my projects, I try to give back any way I can. And so this was her doing awareness in the local village. And these are Hargilas in their nest, looking all cute. The mommy and daddy and baby Hargila. And this is at a local school where Purnima is presenting to kids and some of her team, and you can see another Hargila textile. And these are some coloring pages of the Hargila at the dump. And this is Pravita weaving some Hargila textile. I mean, this was incredible to see. This is actually a gamosa, which is a traditional Assamese garment. And wherever you go there, they'll give you a gamosa and a cup of tea. I was like, I'm never leaving. Because you show up at someone's house, they give you a gamosa and some tea. This was a woman named Janali, and she was making tote bags while I was there. And they even convinced people at a wedding while I was there to celebrate Hargila at the wedding. So this was at a beautiful Assamese wedding, and this is a young girl with some Hargila henna on her. They also did henna on my arms. I didn't know how long it took to dry, though. So, of course, it ended up all over my coat and my camera strap. And this is members of the Hargila Army at a cricket match. They have a traveling statue of Hargila that will just like show up places. And this is Hargila in the landfill. They have this amazing thing called a gular sack, but nobody knows what it's for. Maybe it's for eating spirits or whatever magical things they do, but no one has figured out exactly what it's for. But it inflates and deflates. I guess if I had one of those, I'd put like gummy worms or treasures in it or something. This is more Hargila in the landfill. I just think they probably have more personality of any bird that I've ever seen. They all look kind of different to me and were just incredible to witness. These are people that lived and worked in the landfill, and these little boys were incredibly kind, and I would talk to them every day. And it was just an incredible experience being there. And this is when Purnima was doing outreach in the landfill, because what was interesting, the people that live and work in the landfill can get very close to Hargila, like right next to them. But anybody that visits, Hargila is like, nope. Like Hargila would see me from very far away and be like, bye. And the people that live and work there, Hargila is just side by side with them. It was pretty incredible. And this, to me, this is a shot that I love taking. This is a Hargila feather in the trash. And to me, this just kind of symbolizes how a lot of, to me, this photo symbolizes a lot. And there's Hargila with some equipment in the landfill. They kind of wait until new trash comes in and sweeps down. They're natural scavengers, so they're always going to go where that food is. But another reason why they do that is because, like here, wetlands are rapidly disappearing, and they love wetlands and stuff like that. So the great news is that Purnima's work has had an amazing impact. Their population has risen to 950 birds, up from 400 when she started. And when she started this campaign, there were 28 nests in the village, and there were 220 as of a few years ago, which is pretty incredible. And this is literally, I had to go all the way to India to learn, oh, if you take care of what's in your backyard, it can make a huge difference. So it's such an amazing program that she's doing there. And just following my heart and doing this had a huge unexpected results for me. And this story that I shot ended up in the New York Times, Biographic, National Wildlife Magazine, Now This News, and won the Conservation Award for Bird Photographer of the Year of 2021. Thank you. Here's a New York Times, a grab of that, the local New York paper. So I told my dad in Kentucky, I'm like, yeah, it's going to be a local New York paper. And then it was in the print version as well. And it was great when Purnima came to visit because I got to give her the actual hard copies of it. And I couldn't have done this without her, Hargila. So I'm forever grateful for that opportunity. And this is Purnima and I together out on the town being cute. And this is just a still from Now This News. But just being involved with her and being involved in that culture was absolutely incredible. And I dream of going back there one day. And I love the food. So like I said, went all the way to India to realize I always appreciated my backyard, but then I really appreciated it because the pandemic hit. And like many of us, I was stuck at home. And one day I was wondering, I'm really into camera trapping, which is really like a wildlife selfie booth. Essentially a trail cam, but I do it with DSLR cameras. And I really wanted to learn how to camera trap smaller creatures. Like, I don't know why everyone doesn't freak out about shrews and all these little cuties in our backyard, but I'm like, I wonder what it would be like to camera trap, birds and all these things. And what would happen if I put my camera trap underneath my bird feeder, which I only hang up in the winter months because we have bears. And I also am rewilding my backyard so they have natural food sources. And the whole goal of this project was to share the beauty of overlooked common species in the hope that viewers would turn their attention to their own backyards. And I ended up doing this project every day for 4 months, and I've done it every winter since. I'm doing it right now because it really reveals insights into species behaviors, like things about these common birds that I had never seen before. And considerations were taken to sanitize the bird feeder regularly, rotate it, rake underneath, and rewilding as well, and leaving my garden completely wild. So there's things to eat during the winter that are natural sources. So this is a picture from the project. This is, shout out to the dark-eyed juncos. I love the juncos so much. To me, hands down, the most hilarious, engaging backyard bird I've ever encountered. I mean, that just says it all, right? It's just like, what's up? I don't care about your tufted titmice. I'm the junco. Tufted titmouse.
Nice work.
Thank you. They're pretty adorable. Of course, we have the squirrels. I actually don't mind squirrels coming to visit me. I think they're hilarious, and as you know, that's a gray squirrel. Shout out to my black cap chickadee. Really funny, because I always thought when I see photos, I see them up at the bird feeder, but who's coming underneath it?
Oh my
Northern cardinal, the deer in a snowstorm. And when you talk about behavior, it was really interesting because cardinal, I mean, that's just a sexy guy, right? He's just like,
aggressive.
yeah, aggressive, fighting with your window. Have you had that? The cheer, cheer, cheer.
Loves a car.
The car.
Oh.
Do you have like a Mustang or something like that? No? They love muscle cars. 70s, that's me. I dream of having a 70s muscle car. But for example, I noticed northern cardinals would always be the last to visit the bird feeder. Always. And because I was doing this project, I was able to observe that behavior. So this is where the drama starts. Dun, dun, dun. So right by the bird feeder, there's a bluestone wall. And I thought, well, what happens if I turn the camera a little and see if there's stuff creeping around at night, taking advantage of things. And sure enough, this is Notches, the deer mouse. You can see a notch in his ear. And Notches would come back over and over. And this is actually a milkweed seedling, because I wondered what it was, because I had been rewilding my yard, but the milkweed was way across the yard. But somehow a seed ended up there, and I let it grow, and it turned into milkweed. But that's Notches being Notches. This is one of my favorite animals that lives here that I had no idea, because I learn as I go. I'm self-taught. This is a northern short-tailed shrew, North America's only venomous mammal. So it's kind of like the serial killer in your backyard. They cache their prey. They paralyze them and drag them to the burrow. But this is Matilda, and I always do it with the same one, because you can see a little wound. But I'm obsessed with shrews now. I just think they're the coolest thing ever. I mean, the fact that they're venomous is incredible. And I know there's other shrews too, pygmy shrews and all these other ones I've never seen, but the northern short-tailed shrew is the one I see the most. This is our American red squirrel, who would also come to the rock den. I don't know if there was a club down there or like illegal gambling or what was going on. I even got a photo that unfortunately I forgot to put in the presentation of a black-capped chickadee coming out of it, being like coming out of the hole. So here we have another dark-eyed junco, and then a junco being all cute. This is where the lens had frozen over. And so beneath the bird feed, and this is actually from last year, a newer shot. Look at those lures, those electric yellow lures. White-throated sparrow, love them. So beneath the bird feeder, it was interesting because this project really took off. Like, I never would have imagined anything. I would have never dreamed it. And to me, it's interesting because this is steps from my house, and they're very common birds, but I think it really resonated with people. It was just published in December in the Wall Street Journal. It's been in the Guardian. Science Friday made a really cool video. I did a how-to for Cornell's Living Bird magazine, National Wildlife magazine, Audubon magazine. It's been some other places as well. And every time someone wants it, I just run to my husband and I'm like, I can't even believe it. Like, this project has far exceeded my expectations. And I really, really hope it makes people look at their backyard. I always appreciate when people email me and tell me that, because I do think the power to make a difference starts in our backyards. And I just think, I love the exotic creatures, but I think, what a adorable bird, right? So I mentioned earlier I'm from Kentucky. I successfully got rid of most of my accent. But if you put a moon pie in front of me, it'll come back. So in last year, I was Bernheim Forest's first ever environmental artist in residence. And Bernheim Forest is located in Claremont, Kentucky. And it's actually the largest privately owned forest block in the eastern U.S. It's over 16,000 acres. And of course, all of the forest provides clean water, combats climate change. Unfortunately, it's threatened by a gas pipeline proposed by Louisville Gas and Electric, which they're currently in court fighting, which is absolutely heartbreaking because this is privately owned land that was supposed to be forever for the residents of Kentucky. And so the energy company is breaking a conservation easement to put this pipeline there. It's really, really awful. And hopefully it won't get too sad with what I'll share next. But there's some, I know what you're probably thinking. Kentucky, what's there? Well, there's bourbon, but there's also like, this is actually, Bernheim's right across from Jim Beam. So I would sit at my cabin and you could smell them making all the bourbon. But the whole goal of my residency was to document the surprising biodiversity and the hidden gems of Bernheim in the least accessible areas. And because I grew up in the Louisville, Kentucky area, I wasn't a photographer growing up. I wasn't into nature, but this whole project really reconnected me with my roots, like on a deep level. And I hope the photographs from this project provide a call to action so people can preserve this resource for future generations. I mean, the pipeline thing to me is absolutely bonkers. But so this is a beaver. Camera trapping beavers was incredible. I actually met Chelsea at a track and sign eval. I'm really into track and sign. And so it was really cool to see beaver track and sign. And by the way, that's how I choose all of my camera trap locations, is through track and sign, looking at the environment, looking at what's around. So it was incredible to see beavers because I just love them. This is the wetland which Bernheim restored. There hadn't been a wetland in this area for over 100 years. And they did a bunch of work and got the wetlands growing. So this was one of the most surprising camera trap shots. I had set up hoping to get the beaver, which I did, but then this little fellow snuck by being all sneaky, and this is an American bittern, which I realize is a common bird, but in Kentucky it's very migratory. And the last time they had officially gotten a report of one there on Bernheim's records was in the 1960s. So they were really excited to get the shot, and it was certainly a surprise for me to get that shot. I put this in for Chelsea because this is a wood frog tadpole. And I heard there's a salamander expert here that I want to talk to because I don't have the pictures in this presentation, but these wood frog tadpoles, I have photos of them eating a dead frog. I have them swimming into this egg mass and eating it, and then also eating a crawdaddy. So I was hoping we could talk about what's going on with them. Are they demons? I mean, can't they completely freeze themselves?
Wood frogs?
Yeah, so they're pretty magical. So maybe they get their powers to do that by eating other frogs, but I love amphibians, so that was really cool to see. This is eastern redbud. When the sun was rising one day, it was pink. What was really exciting was learning that these buds are edible, and I was so inspired by these trees because I don't know why I don't see them a lot by me. I came home and planted a few in my yard. These are some raccoons going across the beaver dam. Again, track and sign. When I found a beaver dam, I completely freaked out because I was like, oh my gosh, nature's highway, let's set it up. And it was pretty wild what would cross it every night. So this is Cedar Grove. This is what's threatened by the pipeline. And you can see it's really sad what's happening in this area. These are all warehouses. And so Bernheim is this giant block of unbroken forest, and there's warehouses surrounding it, and the area is getting more and more. I mailed back a return this week, and the return address was, I realized, one of these warehouses because I had driven around looking at the warehouses. And so the pipeline will go through there if it gets approved, and which is a shame. This is Kentucky glade-cress. It only grows in 2 counties in Kentucky. It's a very rare wildflower, and it can only grow on glades, which is where a thin limestone covers the ground and only certain things can grow. So knowing that it's an endemic plant would be destroyed. This is where it gets sad. This is one of my favorite creatures I've ever spent time with. This is a bluff vertigo snail. Discovered by Lori Schroeder, a volunteer researcher and master snailer. She's absolutely incredible. And these are 2 millimeter snails that only live on vuggy limestone habitat. And if the pipeline is approved, it will go directly through the rock. They will blow up the rock that these snails live on. And you can see how tiny this snail is. This is a quarter. So when I would be trying, I got a macro lens to photograph them, and it wasn't magnifying enough. So I got another macro lens. I had to try 3 different lenses to get this snail. And even a 5x macro lens, you still have to crop to get the photo. But they were incredible to see. So this is one of my favorite creatures, opossum, adorable. Who wouldn't love to have a built-in pocket, right? And so this is the buggy limestone, and snails live here in this kind of like Fraggle Rock. When it rains or they come out of these little holes and they like snail around and do their stuff. So that's a preview of my Kentucky project and some of the things I've done. And in conclusion, that's my journey from comedy to conservation photography. I have a lot more to share. I just don't want to talk your ears off. And I just want to encourage everyone, don't be afraid to fail and stay curious and brave. Chase your dreams, because you'll be surprised where you may end up. This is me working in the landfill with the Greater Adjutants, and this is what really solidified my path. And do we have any questions? Any questions?
So what did you set up? Did you have like a high performance camera, like in this trail camera?
Oh, for beneath the bird feeder.
Yeah.
So the question was, what kind of camera and setup did I use? I use it's basically like a Pelican case, and you put a DSLR in front of it. You can put any type of camera you like, and it connects to a sensor that you position. And when the heat of an animal, it's really triggered by heat, it makes a thermal map. And so when a difference in heat, you have to be careful with rocks as well. Rocks will trigger it as it heats up. And so what happens when the birds or the cute little junco comes in front, the sensor sends a signal to the camera, which then takes the picture. And it's all weatherproof, and so it can be rained on, snowed on. Yes.
So we see the nest, they were going from 28, I think, to 220.
Right.
And the birds, do you have a sense of when, if we went back to 1900, how many of these birds were there? What was the demise? What was the timing of the demise?
That's a really good question. So the exciting thing about me is that I don't know everything, but I try. So what I do understand about the question was, for those listening at home, was about the demise of Greater Adjutants, if their population was higher in the past. And my understanding, in the 1800s, in India, they used to lay out corpses and have Hargila come and eat them to help. They were really cleanup crew. And also in Calcutta, there's some images where they're on the emblem of the city. So their populations used to be a lot higher, and from my understanding, it's through habitat destruction, and especially in this area, people would cut down their trees because they didn't want them in their backyard. And so I really think it's all.
Do you know when that began intensively? Is it post World War II? Is it in the 70s? Do you have any idea?
But that's a good thing that I should know. But I would think it would be past then with all the development. But it's a good question, for sure. Yes, sir.
So,
Yes, I love moths. We have an amazing mother in the house.
So the picture of you at the landfill with the locals, what were the temperatures like?
Oh yeah, repeat the question. So the question about what were the temperatures like in the landfill, it was very hot, and I thought New York City in the summer was bad, but you would get a headache and get sick. It was very, very hard working conditions, especially alone. I know I called Andy once from the landfill crying. It was hard. The smell was intense. It was very, very hot, like where you're like wet, hot, and then the smell.
I asked because I saw there was another picture of you dressed in black.
Right. Well, you know what that was? That was I wore like a mechanic suit to cover up my clothes, And I had the mask before it was cool, because what was interesting was that was in February 2020, and I got home in early March, right before everything shut down. So because I would get such bad headaches, I would wear a mask, and also just to stay clean, because I was traveling, like I'd have a suit I'd put on. Because the garbage isn't sorted there, so you would walk through medical waste, you would walk through all this waste that was very intense. Yep. Yes.
Can I give you a couple of questions?
Yes, we have some. Hey Zoom, what's up?
What did you set your camera on the ground? And then another one is, what kind of camera did you use for camera trapping? And can you describe how you do camera trapping?
Thank you for those questions. That's a lot to describe, so I'll try to do it quickly. There's a lot of great resources online. So for Beneath the Bird Feeder, I'm literally just putting the camera on the ground and balancing it on rocks, believe it or not. I always do things as easy as possible. I always like to put my stuff for camera trapping as low to the ground as possible, because I feel like we're always looking down at wildlife, and I think we should be looking up. Thank you. No. But so, and in that, I'm using really old cameras. Beneath the Bird Feeder was on a Canon 70D. So that's almost 10 years old at this point, I think. Because you're not, I mean, some people can, I guess, but I mean, because I want freedom to position the camera traps, they're not locked up. So you could literally, if you found them, walk away with them. So I put really old cameras in them in case that happens, or in case a bear wants a snack. We have, but yes.
Do you think, when I see, that you've done this backyard project, I mean, I could see how you got kids to be able to do something like that. They'd be so fascinated, and it would start to build more of protection. They want to protect what they were seeing in the thing.
Right.
Do you know of any way like that it would be real simple for kids maybe to do that, or maybe down the road?
I had a question just for people at home about kids camera trapping. I mean, I would love to teach it. I'm not sure how it would be done. I just figure out things as I go, to be honest. But I mean, I'm sure it could be done even with trail cameras. You can get a good trail camera for like $40. I think the more eyes we have in our backyards, the better. I have 3 cameras in my yard right now, and I have Bonkers the possum visiting, which is really exciting. I do kind of name the visitors to my yard. But yes.
Did you find in India a lot of the birds or the other animals that were out there getting wrapped up in the garbage or swallowing plastic, or like, did you see much mortality from that?
I didn't see anything dying, but unfortunately, because a lot of cows do roam, and because of the way their stomachs are built, there's a lot of cow deaths because they scavenge in the landfill. And Hargila, unfortunately, because of the plastic, it does affect them, but a lot of the waste that I encountered was out in the open, and it does seem to be an issue, especially with cows, especially because they can't digest it, which is a bummer. Yep. Oh, you're gonna speak it so I don't have to repeat it?
Charlotte's would like you to talk about wilding just in your own backyard, and just any ideas for a Pittsfield event to transform the city into a Berkshire city, and culture with the wild.
What's the question again?
She just wants you to speak a little bit about just wilding in your own backyard and how people in Pittsfield, I think, can do that.
Oh, got it. So, I mean, Doug Tallamy, right? That's what inspired me. Man, if I ever met him, I would totally fangirl out. I'd lose it. Like, it'd be like meeting Jane Goodall or David Attenborough. I'm just getting all like, woo. So for me, it started really small. Just planting milkweed, but really learning. There's a native nursery called Catskill Native Nursery, and I would just show up and just be so excited and read things. But then what I started doing was reading what certain plants would attract. I'm really into mothing. Like I said, we've got a moth buddy showed up, and I learned that certain plants would attract moths. So like now if you go to my garden at night, there are moths out like crazy, and I'm like, oh my god! And even last summer, I went to bed and one fell out of my hair. I took it outside, but I do find sticks and things. But I mean, just really simple stuff like coneflower, milkweed, and I'd plant. But now I get even to, I planted something called a hop tree, which apparently giant swallowtails like. And every year I've never seen any, and this year I went out to the hop tree and there were a million little oranges on it, tiny oranges, and then I had swallowtail babies, giant swallowtails. So all these little things bring more and more stuff. And as you know, caterpillars are what, like 80% of the diet of birds, so it makes more birds come. I know I didn't answer the question because I get really excited about that. I'm always planting stuff. So basically I would start with like whatever you can find that's native that draws stuff, coneflower, milkweed. One of my favorite is the anise hyssop. I love that. Bee balm, because then the hummingbird moth comes. Have you seen one of those? Those are bonkers. The first time I saw one, I was like, what? And all of it works together. And I really like coneflower and milkweed because I like winter sowing, and you can just plant the seeds and it grows and grows. So yeah.
What's your favorite plant for attracting moths?
That's a hard one. I mean, Joe Pye. Joe Pye was bonkers. I would see moths just all over the Joe Pye. Like they had been partying all night. Yeah, the Joe Pye has really surprised me with what comes to it. And the anise hyssop, I would see a lot of moths on that as well, which was really, really crazy at night. But I did plant some moonflower winter sowing. I don't think that's a native. There is a native moonflower. I don't want to back myself into the corner, but apparently the moths like the moonflower. So we'll see how that goes, if it gets a good Yelp review.
Cool project.
Yeah.
So you had said that northern cardinals, you noticed they come to the feeder last. Do
Right.
you have any insight on that, like why they might do that?
I don't. So the question was, why do northern cardinals come last? I don't know. Maybe there's a scientist or someone that knows more in the crowd. My theory is because if I looked that good and that amazing, I would show up to the hot spot to shut it down at night to be like, hey, you know? I just think because they're like adorable. But I does anyone know? It's like, I love, this is why I'm hooked on nature. There's so many things I don't know, and I learn new stuff every day. Yes.
Is there any way to camera trap moths?
Actually, that's a good question. There's a, people have done that, and I did do it with the hummingbird moth this past summer. You actually need a laser trigger. They're very, very quick, but it can be done. I've seen some amazing shots of it being done, and I have tried to start photographing bats as well with the laser trigger, and I never get the bats, I get moths. Really small. And what's also strange is that sometimes, especially in the forest, moths will trip my camera trap triggers, and I'll just wonder what it's in, and I'll zoom in and out, and then I'll see like this little white moth like this, like, hey! Yes.
When you were in Assam,
Yeah.
I worked up there years ago.
What?
Yeah.
No way. Keep
Yeah,
a
but I
bar.
didn't get out to some of the places you got out to, unfortunately.
Wow, I've never met anyone else that's been to
Yeah,
Assam.
it's amazing.
Can you believe it?
I know. So,
Maybe we shouldn't tell people how cool it
I
is,
know.
because then it'll be
and
like,
the tea's amazing.
the tea's incredible. I've never had tea. Yeah, I've never, tea here tastes like trash to me now. After having it right in the Assam, it's incredible.
But I was gonna say, were the people working in the trash? Were they the trash pickers that?
They were.
I saw that all over.
Yeah, they were, and it's really heartbreaking. But they're actually incredibly kind people, and what they do, they kind of, because the trash isn't sorted, they will go through and remove recyclables and sell them. So I would always try to give back to them when I was there, and it was amazing what Purnima is doing with them, because she does programs and takes food, and And it really, what you saw that as well. I mean, it really changes you. And honestly, I came back and I'm like, I'm a spoiled brat. I mean, look at what we have here.
Yeah, opens your eyes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Oh, in the back, and then we'll get to you.
So have you ever thought of using your ventriloquist talent to like make bird puppets and things to teach children?
That's a good question. I just got asked if I have thought about using my ventriloquism to teach children, or just to bridge between nature and that. I'm actually working on something right now with that. So we'll see. It'll just take a while. And then you had a question?
Yeah, I was curious, you did such a drastic transition in your career, which involves your livelihood. Do you have any, I'm also getting interested in photography, and do you have any suggestions of how to efficiently transition to a livelihood with what you're doing?
I mean, for me, it was just, so the question is how to transition to be a photographer, just to do it as much as you can. And for me, things just kept happening, and just knowing other photographers, I feel like there's never been a more important time to do wildlife photography with the state of the world. So there's opportunities for that. But like any arts, pursuing the arts, it is really, really hard. One thing, I didn't share some of the downers, but for the Hargila story, it was rejected for over 8 months. No one wanted it. The same with Beneath the Bird Feeder. And so a lot of it, I think, is really believing deep down in your work, and that you have a message, and just keep pushing. And so if you want to do it, and just keep pushing, and try to find creative ways to get out there and get that message out there, whether it's teaming up with local organizations, or like every story you've seen here, I self-produce, I save up and then fund it. And it's hard, but to me it's worth it, because it's just really important to connect people with nature in that way. So
Have you noticed if social media has helped you, or having a blog or a website, or?
So that's what's funny. I quit Facebook like a year ago, and I'm not as active on social media as I was with performance. I know it helps a lot of people. For me, I'm honestly not that active, so I can't really say, because I want to do this movement where not being on social media is the new social media. Because I think just being from an arts background, and the background I really like to, for me, I really like to work without anyone's opinion or anything, because it makes me, with this, it's really about following my heart. So I know I'm giving like a social media speech now, but it helps a lot of people. I know a lot of people that have built careers with it. But is it a must? It hasn't been a deal breaker for me, which I was scared about, but it hasn't had that much of a negative effect. So I would say either way, like if you want to do the social media thing, do it. And it's a great way to get your work out there and share the message as well. But I think a website is a must. I think a lot of photographers forget to do a website anymore, and I think it's really important.
Is your website your name?
Yeah, if you want to even find out how to get the Hargila textiles, it's just carlarhodes.com. I think yes.
One last question, what's your next project?
My next project is, I'm actually doing a project in a week or so, but I can't talk about it yet. I'm traveling somewhere to do something, but I'm always open to doing newer projects. Like if anybody's out there that is interested in camera trapping on conservation land, or has any cool projects that they want to team up on, like I'm always open, trying to do as much as I can. Yep. Do we have any more questions? Yes.
Where did you get your 1921 puppet?
Oh, Cecil, I got Cecil Sinclair at the Ventriloquist Convention, which is a yearly convention that's been going forever, and his little ear was sticking out underneath the table in the room where they sell ventriloquist dummies. And this is, it really should be a Christopher Guest movie if he's listening. We can do that. And the guy that sold Cecil to me, I said, why is he under the table? And he's like, oh, he's so scary, I had to take him off the table. And I'm like, I want him. But he was truly made in London in the 20s. When you take his head apart, he's got very old newspaper. And spider webs and ghosts. And there's some scary stuff in his head, in mine too. But I think, yes.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but is it asking you too much to demonstrate ventriloquism?
I mean, I guess I could if I have like, I don't know, Chelsea, you want to come up? I haven't done it for a long time. My lips are shaking.
Do I need to move my mouth?
Okay, let's see. Hello, my name's Chelsea, and out of all the green drinks we've had, Carla Rhodes has been the best that we've had. She's absolutely amazing. You gotta get her shirts, they're incredible. She did these, and look at this. She did this. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, thank you. And I can answer any more questions after as well. You know, I gotta get some onion rings.
I was gonna
so I'm
say,
hanging.
Carla's pretzels just arrived, so.
What?
Gotta sign off.
No, but thank you so much.
I had two that.
This was so much fun. Seriously, thank you.